For the past year, AFT and First Book have been establishing a relationship and testing ways to work together to help instill the love of reading and to raise literacy rates through community engagement. Literacy has been a huge piece of our agenda for years. We chose to work with First Book because of their successful track record. They've harnessed the power and the promise of social entrepreneurship to bring millions of free and low-cost books to students and families in need. And not just so students have books in school, but so students have books at home. In 1992, First Book co-founder Kyle Zimmer discovered that publishers were destroying millions of books a year that were not sold. Kyle made a deal with the publishers and said, or promised, if they made these books available free or at low cost, she would get them into the hands of students who couldn't afford them. This would then help more kids become readers and create new customers for these publishing companies in the future. She presented to them a win-win solution, and they went for it. But don't take my word for it. Kyle's been doing this since 1992, and we just met her in the last couple of years. And I want you to meet Kyle Zimmer, the president and the co-founder of First Book. Kyle.
Good morning. Well, it's a delight to be here with you today. It really is. And I want to open my comments by introducing you to somebody who's been important to me. Her name is Mrs. Evans. She was my first grade teacher. She had bright red hair, sort of like this, and she stood about 4 feet 6 inches. You know, I spent most of first grade trying to figure out this woman. And by Christmas, I went up to my mom and I said that I had it narrowed down to two possibilities. She was either a clown or a magician. And there was plenty of evidence on both sides. On the magician's side, she sat with me for a couple of hours after school one day, and she handmade a whole stack of flashcards for me. And then she very solemnly chanted over them and handed them to me and told me that those flashcards would make me add and subtract at the speed of lightning. And, you know, that was kind of heavy for a 6-year-old, so I believed her. And I'm no math whiz, but I'm pretty fast at addition and subtraction still. And then, you know, on the side, you know, she could have been a clown, too, because unlike really any other adult in my life, she threw herself heart and soul into being silly. She came into the girls' room one afternoon and found my friends and I throwing wet paper towels at each other. I'm just saying, I was one of those kids for all of you, and I'm sorry. But, and you know, and we all froze, you know, because we were sure we were going to get in terrible trouble. And she cracked up. And she stood there and taught us that if we threw them just right, that they would stick on the wall. And we spent about 20 minutes, you know, about 10 feet back from the wall trying to spell our names and stuff in wet paper towels. And, you know, and I'd go home to my mom and I'd say, who does this kind of stuff? You know, who does this with kids? And I am 51 years old. And I forget almost everything these days. But I have never forgotten Mrs. Evans. And I can see her face. Let me clap. I can hear her laugh, and I can still feel the relief that she laughed instead of scolding us. But so you see, I'm very personally aware of the power in this room. I know that you guys are remarkable teachers. You're remarkable educators. You care deeply. You are magicians. You are sometimes clowns, I suspect. And most importantly, you're heroes. And it's not just the teachers. We've learned in our work with AFT over the last year or so about a broad array of heroes. Professionals who work with children in all kinds of settings. PSRPs, public employees, healthcare employees, and many, many more. And First Book wants to be a resource for all of your heroic work. However it is that you connect with children, we want to be there for you. And I don't need to tell you about the remarkable ways that we can use books and educational resources. Of course, they're powerful in the classroom, but they can be used to instigate a conversation between social workers and families. They can be used to calm nerves during a doctor's visit. We can do amazing things together. We started First Book to support heroes just like you. It's a national system that provides the highest quality books and educational resources to teachers and caregivers all over the country serving children in need. You should think of it as a supply pipeline. And that pipeline gives you exactly what you need to do the great heroic work that you're doing. Now, as Randy said, we've been at this for 20 years, and we've done some extraordinary things. By the end of this year, and I said this morning, I'm going to get in trouble with my communications team, but I'm going to say it anyway. By the end of this year, we expect to distribute our 100 millionth book. How about it? We provide resources to kids from 0 to 18, and what that means is from the minute they're born until the time they graduate from high school, we can be there with you, helping you every step of the way. And we're here today to celebrate this great partnership between First Book and AFT that's already brought unprecedented numbers of books and resources into AFT members' classrooms and all kinds of settings. And we have seen a change, a paradigm-shifting change in community after community. Now, when we started 20 years ago, we knew a couple of things. Number one, we didn't want to create just one more literacy program. We wanted to support you. And I want to give you a couple of examples of how we work. One is, you guys know this book, right? Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Okay, this is a great example, and there are many of them. This book, and it's actually a series, swept the nation, right? And the problem is, though, that poor kids can't afford this book. And so the very kids that need us the most are left out of a national debate about reading and about learning and about engaging and about silliness, if you've read these books. But this book retailed at $15.99 at the bookstores, and that means it's completely out of reach of millions and millions and millions of kids. So what we did was we commissioned our own edition, and through First Book, this book, now including shipping, is $3. How about it? At First Book, we also focus on teacher choice, and I want to give you an example in Crestwood Elementary in Hillsborough County, Florida. There you are. Teachers took the time to identify books for every kid in the program by reading level and by interest. And then they held a community event where they gave the books that were specially picked out for each child to those kids, and you should have seen their faces. It was extraordinary. It was just extraordinary. Now, we can't do that work from behind our desks in Washington, D.C. I know that you realize there might be a couple of limits to Washington, D.C. these days. We can't do that work in Washington, D.C. That's the job of Mrs. Evans. That's your job. And we can't do our work unless we're communicating and holding hands and talking to you, because we want to be there to make it, to get your voice heard and to get the resources you want and you know will really turn the light on for those kids. Another quick example that where we aggregate the voice of the teachers and professionals in the lives of those kids, and it comes to us from Cleveland, Ohio. In Cleveland, where we piloted again with AFT, we heard from the teachers that anti-bullying was a really critical issue. And so we worked with them to develop the lists of resources, and with their leadership, we were able to not just provide those books to the teachers in Cleveland, we were able to aggregate that and make those resources available to teachers and program people all over the country, but we followed the lead of Cleveland teachers. Now, I don't need to tell you that this is a time of tremendous division in our country. And the good news is that putting books in the hands of kids is something that's very unifying. It's something we all can believe in. And Randy and I have seen this magic all across the country, where with the wonderful work of AFT community partners, we've pulled together teachers and principals, superintendents, clinics, shelters, summer programs, mayor's offices, and they've all come together around this partnership, and it's pure magic. I want to urge you to stop by the community lane and meet the First Book team and talk to us about what we can do for you in your hometowns. Because we want to be there with you, and we need to hear from you so we know what you need. And also, and this is really, really critical, go online and register. Go to firstbook.org/AFT and please register with us. Now, a few years back, I got the chance to be at a First Book distribution not far from where I grew up in southern Ohio. And, the books are piled high. There are these great tables, and the doors kind of burst open, and this 8-year-old kid comes flying through the door at me, and he says in his thickest southern Ohio accent, and I know this accent, these are my people. He said to me, "Ma'am, do you have any Spanish books?" And I looked at this little face and I thought, wow, things are really changing out here. And I said, "Honey, are you taking Spanish in school?" And he leaned in real close and he said, "No, but I know it's out there, and this here is my big chance." And I'll tell you, just like you guys, and I know you do this too, you're up at midnight and you still have 5 things left to do, and I think of that kid, and I stay up and work because of him. But I want to borrow his words this morning and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for giving First Book our big chance to work with you and support your wonderful, heroic work. Thanks, Randy.
Just last week, AFT and First Book partnered to hold a book bank distribution, there we go, where AFT volunteers helped distribute nearly 500,000 free books, and Detroit area AFT members personally picked up more than 30,000 books for students. Along with their kids, caravan to the book bank, and received 100,000 books for Toledo students. Now, as you can see on this screen, the kids were so excited, they started reading the books in the warehouse. And I'm really excited to report that more than 20 AFT First Book pilot programs are ongoing across the country as we speak. And they are responsible for nearly 250,000 books, mostly from the First Book online marketplace, being distributed to students and families in need. We've done this literally in the last 6 months. That's why I wanted you out here. Remember that first meeting? I had a first meeting with Kyle, and I was like, you do this? You do. And so my eyes were like deer in headlights. I'm like, I can't believe you've done all this, and we don't know about you. So I just want to ask a couple of our locals who have been really engaged in this to tell you what's going on and what they've done.
I could say so much about this wonderful program. Richard and I have a number of students who lost their homes and all their possessions due to the recent devastating tornadoes. Through First Book, we were able to choose very low-cost, high-quality books and distribute them to read over the summer at 2 fun end-of-the-year school events. Some of the kids were absolutely overwhelmed. They had never had books of their own they could take home. It was amazing. One little girl came up to me, and instead of taking pizza and Bluebell ice cream, she said, I am not going to leave these books. She said, if you will hold these books for me so they won't go anywhere, then I will go get some pizza and some ice cream. The reaction of the school staff was also amazing. I had people come up to me who had never considered joining the union. They said thank you and expressed their surprise and their gratitude that the union cared enough to do something like this for our children. It's a great program, and thank you, First Book.
Brothers and sisters, because these first 2 events made such an impact on the students, on our members, and our community, we are already incorporating First Book into our back-to-school campaign and organizing programs to get even more of our members involved in the First Book initiative and put more books in our students' hands. Together, Jefferson County AFT and Birmingham AFT are already working with local community organizations and businesses. Thank you, First Book, and thank you, National AFT, for bringing this wonderful opportunity to us. Thank you.
And thank you, Vi and Richard. And I think Patrick Keegan, president of the Charlotte, Florida EA, is at mic 3, right? Thank you, Patrick.
We've had an absolutely fantastic experience with First Book in Charlotte County, Florida. And for a number of reasons. One, the staff has been so responsive. It's not like other programs where books just show up and you're not sure exactly what you're going to get. Teachers and media specialists and some of our paras have the opportunity to go online and select the specific books that fit the criteria and the needs of their kids. It's also given us a wonderful opportunity to reach out to our business community, which has been pretty hostile towards us, with a completely apolitical message that they can have a really hard time not getting behind. And we have formed an unbelievable and unprecedented partnership with our superintendent and our school board and our local chamber of commerce, who up until recently had absolutely nothing good to say about us very, very publicly. So thank you so much for this opportunity to really put books in the hands of our Title I schools and to give us something positive that we can do in our community and get recognized for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. So the reason I wanted you to hear from the ground is, in 6 months, as I said before, we had this meeting about 8, 9 months ago, and in 6, 7 months, we have all of this going on. We just asked a few locals if they wanted to get involved to see if we could pilot something, to see if there was a real, not just an idea, but a real relationship. And I think you're seeing what AFT locals and First Book can accomplish together and what it means in terms of community. This is what we were talking about when we say solution-driven unionism, but it's only a start.